Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be showing you something I like to call the indie game formula, or for convenience just the formula. And this is going to be mainly focused towards story-driven and character and narrative-based video games. So if you're looking to make the next Super Meat Boy or the next Roblox, then this is not the video for you. You can follow the formula yourself. It outlines why and how some of the most popular story-driven indie games, like UnderTale, are so beloved. The formula has 5 basic elements that all come together as a whole to make a great game. What I'm trying to do is show you how these good games I'm going to talk about executed these elements and why they executed them so effectively, so you can learn from them and get inspired. 1. Characters and cast of characters. 2. Unique gameplay element. 3. Interrelated music. 4. Morals or an effective use of video games as a storytelling medium. This is an important one. And 5. World building and pertinence. Some of this may sound obvious to you, but some games follow this formula and still fail. I'll explain. Segment 1. Characters and cast of characters. The reasons that these games are so memorable and appealing, at least to a lot of people, are the characters. Characters help to propel the story through actions and dialogue, and they're what you hope to get attached to throughout the experience. Just like any real human being, you want to be friends with that person and you want to enjoy being with them. In Lisa the Painful RPG, your party members have interesting designs and personalities, and the characters written for the story, Brad and Buddy, are super complex and very interesting. A cast of characters, notably in UnderTale, Night in the Woods, all the Mother games, Lisa the Painful, Thomas Was Alone, To the Moon, are what make a story game really good, in my opinion. A feeling of camaraderie and interaction. So when you're making your game, put a lot of effort into the characters. Develop each one as a complex being, a realistic being, make them interact, and most importantly, make them important to the story at hand. Don't just make characters for the sake of making a character. And make sure they evolve. They shouldn't be the same the entire game. It's satisfying to see a character learn something about themselves or someone else, which almost all games that follow this formula are good at, and well, most popular movies, books, comics, they're good at character development and character arcs. Segment 2. Unique gameplay element. I want to preface this segment by saying that it isn't integral to have unique gameplay. You could have the standard RPG Maker battle system for all I care, basic walking simulator side-scrolling, and follow everything else flawlessly. It just helps. The most obvious game for this segment would be UnderTale. As an RPG, which is stereotypically known to either have turn-based battles with spells and or real-time turn-based battles like in Chrono Trigger. In UnderTale, it was super refreshing to see something unique and fun. It had a bullet hell mechanic and the ability to talk to your enemies and befriend them, which was pretty unheard of, except in 1992's Shin Megami Tensei, which actually served as inspiration for UnderTale. Night in the Woods is fairly linear, but if you decide to explore the town, there is much to find, and there are a lot of people to talk to, and it builds the world a lot, which gets into segment 5. While there are side-scrolling exploration games like Lisa, everything else was done so well, it's just very different from most games on the market. Speaking of Lisa, it is a standard RPG, but it has major exploration and world building, segment 5, and the battle system, although basic RPG Maker, again, RPG Maker has that aura of stank, but Lisa really does a good job with it. It has very unique character animations and super riveting strategy and difficulty. And the story is just so fascinating. It's like everything works so well in that game. In OneShot, the gameplay is very unique. Some of the puzzles literally manipulate your computer, adding files to different locations, moving the actual game window, etc. This gameplay complements segment 4 perfectly, which I will elaborate on later. So when you're making your game, do something interesting. It doesn't necessarily have to be unique, but it has to be implemented well. And if it's possible, the gameplay should complement the story, but this is a hard task. But of course, if it does complement the story like Undertale, it creates a fantastic experience. Segment 3, Interrelated Music. While it's pretty obvious, music is way more important than you might think. It gives tone, atmosphere, emotion, and character to an event, a setting, or a person. Music isn't just something for the background, it can even be part of the story. In fact, it is best implemented when it is part of the story. One of the most important elements of the music in some of the greatest games and movies and TV shows is motifs, or leitmotifs, where the same melody or harmony occurs in different songs to tie together characters or themes or emotions. These motifs, if connected by the listener in their head while they're listening, can create a subconscious meta-nostalgia for past events in the game or the story. And it doesn't have to be just for a story game. Leitmotifs can bridge themes and emotions and have in many different mediums other than games. Undertale executes this magnificently in its music. Characters that are related in the story have different compositions, but will subtly have the same melodies. This could go completely unnoticed by the average player, and when you hear the similarities in two different songs, you start to connect dots and it blows your mind. This happens in so many of Undertale's musical pieces, it actually makes the music a part of the story itself, its own character, even the lore. Motifs are common, but might not be so well executed as Undertale's. In Night in the Woods, there is a recurring melody, which is like the theme song in many of the pieces, but I couldn't really find any meaningful connections. Night in the Woods music is really good though, and the composer did a good job at conveying atmosphere, so I give that little detail a pass. In Mother 3, one of my favorite games, there are many recurring themes like the love theme and the pig mask theme. They are very simple, memorable melodies that throughout the 40+ hours of the game, it gets manipulated and repeated in a lot of the songs. And there are a lot of songs. There are about 6 hours of music in that game, and a lot of the tracks have similar themes, but that's not random. Whenever the love theme appears, it is given the connotation of love, and whenever you hear it used again, it evokes the same emotion in that scene. So that's what I meant by meta-nostalgia. You hear the love theme at first, and you like it, and then when you hear it again, it gives you the same emotion. It strengthens the bond and the theme. It's the same for the pig mask theme. Whenever the enemy shows up, or whenever tension is happening, the pig mask theme shows up in order to symbolize, like, you know, their overarching power and grip and their evilness. So the music is used as symbolism, which is what a motif is really good at. Think of it like this. You condition a dog to want food when a bell is rung. So when you ring the bell, the dog is like, oh, it's food time. In the music's case, you are the dog, the bell is the melody, and the emotion is the food. OneShot's music is probably the most thematic and atmospheric music I have ever heard in a soundtrack. It is beautiful, yet so dystopian with the subtle synths, reverb, heavy keys, xylophones, bizarre tones and effects, and with catchy melodies, it is unforgettable and one of the biggest highlights of the game. OneShot also manipulates leitmotifs. It has one memorable melody that is used throughout the game. And also, if the music didn't sound like this, and say it was composed like Undertale music, it wouldn't fit the world of OneShot, and it would change the entire tone. OneShot's music is extremely dystopian and very subtle and very atmospheric, and that adds to the fact that it's a very bizarre world on the edge of death. The music sets the tone. Having the right music holds the experience together. It's really important. So when you're making your game, if you are or are not a composer, try to make sure the music you make, receive, download, whatever, make sure it sets the feeling for the game. It has to help you get enveloped and invested in the world. Make motifs for specific emotions you want to reinvigorate later, or motifs for areas, characters that are linked, themes, and also if you can, make it sound good. We want to have good music, so if you can, make the music sound pretty good. Segment 4. An effective use of video games as a medium of storytelling and morals. This one is extremely important. In fact, it's what makes video games as a storytelling medium such an appealing medium in the first place. If you don't understand what I mean by an effective use of video games as a medium of storytelling, I'll give you some examples, so listen close. In What Remains of Edith Finch, there is a part of the game where you are learning about one of your relatives who worked at a fish or produce facility. You use your mouse to drag the fish's head into a chopper and then push it forward to move on. It repeats like this continuously. Grab, slide, chop, push, repeat. You get to feel what it's like to do a monotonous task, but as you're chopping away, you start to daydream on the left, and you have to use your keyboard to navigate your character through this dream world. You can't stop chopping the fish, and you have to move in the daydream. You're using your right hand on the mouse and the left hand on the keyboard. Just like real life, chopping the fish begins to become a reflex, a muscle reflex, and you focus more on the daydream. The cloud where the daydream is begins to grow extremely large, and you barely see the fish table anymore, but you still chop because you memorize the pattern. It's a part of your reflex now. This, to me, is an effective use of video games as a medium of storytelling. In a movie, you would just watch a guy chop away at a fish, and it's so boring he starts to daydream. With a book, you just read it happen. In a video game, you literally experienced it physically with your own hands, with your own mind. You feel what it's like to be taken over by daydreaming, wishing for a better life, the monotony of a factory job becoming a simple muscle in your right hand. It's really fascinating, and when that happens in a video game, it's extremely memorable. In Undertale, you are given the choice to kill or spare monsters. Morally, as a human being, you don't want to kill mercilessly, but in every video game RPG prior to Undertale, that's what you do. You kill every enemy, get points and items, and then kill more enemies. If you kill an Undertale, you, as a human being, are punished for your actions, and people hate you, towns evacuate, the game gets shorter and harder, and the music becomes macabre and slow, you have the dust of monsters on your hands. When you're a good person, the game literally gets better. Characters are friends with you, towns are full of people, the music is cheerier, the game increases in length and content. It goes beyond morals, because instead of telling you killing is bad, you get punished for it in real time. It teaches you to be a better person, and it doesn't have to tell you to be a better person, you just feel it. In OneShot, the game interacts with your computer, your desktop, and your files as a part of the gameplay. And Nico, the main character, will literally talk to you as a god. You are a character in the game, and you speak to the people in it with dialogue options, and they speak back to you. Your connection with the main character and the world becomes so incredibly personal. The real world that's in your computer will fail. No other medium of storytelling can do this. So when you're making your game, make sure to have a reason, a moral, a lesson. It doesn't have to be ham-fisted like, be good, be courageous, oh, be a good person, oh, you should share. But if it is like that, make it subtle. Don't just make it so obvious that you cringe. That's not going to make it good at all. It's not going to make the message memorable because your parents tell you to be a good person, all right? If you want to be a good person, you should experience it and make the morals a part of the game. Just like all the examples I gave you, it can be complex and difficult to accomplish, obviously, but in the end, your game should have a purpose. Most stories have a purpose. And hey, if that purpose is having fun, go for it, but it might not connect with a lot of people emotionally. And again, this is for story-driven games. It's like, you can have a fun game where you shoot zombies, that's fine. But in my opinion, a game where you shoot zombies for fun is a waste of time when you could be playing a story-driven game and learning something about yourself or other people. Segment 5. World building. All the games I have described have worlds that feel real. And even if they feel fantastical, they're still something you want to come back to experience, to explore. Everything about the formula I have talked about goes inside your world, so it's like the paper that the writing goes on. Your world must fit your narrative, your gameplay, your art, your music, etc. Lisa the Painful, a super gritty and realistic post-apocalypse where all the women disappear. It's absolutely fascinating to explore and facilitates the entire story as well as being symbolic in its entirety of the main conflict between the two characters. UnderTale, monsters and humans. Monsters are misunderstood and banished underground, and you explore what a non-human society does to a giant cavernous world. It also makes you sympathetic for the monsters, bettering the connection you have to the story. And the fact that you, as a human, fall into a world of monsters and realize they're nice and that you don't have to kill them is, again, it's a part of the story, it's part of the moral. In OneShot, you just suddenly appear in the world where the entirety of it is on the verge of destruction because the sun is gone. And Nico is the only one who can travel to this tower to restore the sun. Everybody has lost hope, but Nico carries the sun around with them, and everybody gets happy again knowing they might be saved. And again, one of the big gameplay and story elements is the fact that Nico addresses you, the player, as a god. You control Nico in the game, but you can talk to them directly and they talk back. Your connection with the main character in the world becomes so incredibly personal. Night in the Woods is a small, homely town in probably rural Pittsburgh filled with interesting characters, and it just has a very good feeling of life. And what made it so effective is how relatable it is. Someone who lives in a relatively small town where they almost know everyone living there, it touched a lot of people. It made the characters feel more realistic, and it made you feel like you're actually hanging out with a bunch of friends. It just helped set the feeling. So when you're making your game, before you do anything else, where does the story take place? Of course, the story, as it's written, will include a location eventually, but you should think about how the world portrays everything in the formula. It should make sense to the story, it should facilitate your message and the story, and house your gameplay accordingly. It should feel lived in, and it should obviously feel realistic. And what I mean by realistic is not like literally realistic, it's just that it feels like a world. Like it can be magical or whatever, but you can have a magical, phantasmagorical world and it can still be realistic. Or maybe not realistic, but it just has continuity, because the universe has laws. So just give your world basic laws and rules to make it seem like it has structure. Also, there's a thing called environmental storytelling where objects, landscapes, and the environment give away what happened or have its own story and not the actual text. Kind of like if you are walking down the sidewalk and you see a trash can like tipped over and then you see there's a light post near it that's bent over, then you assume that a car hit into the post and then also knocked over the trash can and the trash fell out or whatever. So that's environmental storytelling. There was a story there and you just inferred what happened. So that's the gist of the formula explained in 5 segments. Now, this may have seemed pretty obvious to you or something, but I wanted to give you some examples, some details, and make sure you can use the formula to your advantage to make a good narrative-based game. And you know what? This can even be used in a normal game, just like a fun entertainment game, you know, where you're jumping around, it's a platformer or something. Some of these elements still do apply. Also, in my opinion, art does not matter at all. Your art can be terrible, your art can be amazing. Of course, having amazing art is a great selling point, but UnderTale is a little rough to look at, but it still evokes intense emotion and creativity because of how good everything else is. Don't worry about art. You don't need it to make a good story game. Good art may be a pros point on a game critic's pros and cons list, but it shouldn't detract from the formula. Also, nothing in the formula would at all be effective if your writing is poor. That's why things can follow the formula and still be bad, because the writing is bad. All of these the whole formula, even the world, all of it is like a pill, and the writing is the mouth. You gotta have good writing, or else the pill is not gonna go down. Also, there are some games that are coming out that I think follow the formula, like Amori, Yik, Mothlight, which came out, and it was pretty good, although the writing was subpar. It still had all the elements, and it was a very good experience. I recommend checking it out. And I'm assuming Austin Jorgensen's new game Ninja Tears, he's the guy who made Lisa that I've been talking about. So you can follow the formula word for word, and the game could still be really bad. You need it to be original, and most importantly, you need to be good at writing and storytelling. And it needs to have a point. You can take heavy inspiration from other games, but try to make it your own. If you're making a game to be famous, or get attention, or follow a trend, then it isn't going to do well. You have to make a game that's personal to you. It has to be a form of self-expression, maybe. You want to tell the player something about themselves even, or in the hopes of making people's lives happier and better, or just to make people more learned. So good luck, and use the formula to your advantage, and spread this video to developers or just around to your friends. Tell your dev friends about it, and I would really appreciate it if you could, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. This is a hard video to make, so thank you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye!